My name is Agnes Muthiani. I am presenting on grant proposal, writing and budgeting, and gathering information on this has been quite very interesting, and I would love to share what I have learned so far. So just getting right into it, a grant is funding provided by a charitable foundation or a public charity, trust, or a government agency to a non-profit or individual, which enables them to perform specified activities for the common good, for the good of both the grantor and the grantee. Unlike a loan, a grant is not supposed to be paid back, but progress reports will be required by the granting agency. Grants may also be made by corporate giving programs or non-profit intermediaries which pass through funding from another source. So these intermediaries are the people who connect the grantors and the grantees. So they may also be made by these intermediaries. A grant proposal, now that we know what a grant proposal is a narrative description of the work that a non-profit organization plans to undertake to fulfill both its known and the grant maker's goals. So you just outline what you want to do, and it has to be in line with the goals of the granting agency, and that is what a grant proposal is. A grant proposal includes at the bare minimum a description of the problem to be addressed, a detailed plan for addressing the problem, what it will cost, and what result the grant maker can expect from the proposed project or initiative. And then upon being rewarded the grant, the proposal becomes the basis for a contract that legally binds the grantor and the grantee, and for reporting on the progress of the project. So who writes grants proposals? Some of the people who do that, a number of people can do that, and some of them are the staff at the grant seeking organization where possible. It can be outsourced certified grant writers, but whether you outsource or you have people within write a grant, these people must have experience. Whoever is writing a grant must have experience in the grant writing process. They also must have experience in writing grant winning proposal, of course. As I continue, you'll probably notice that grant writing is a lot like writing a CV, and just matching what grant proposal writing rather is just like writing a CV and matching what you have with what the grantor rather, what that merging the two and ensuring that they are a fit. So grant writers should have good knowledge also. Another thing is that they should have good knowledge of where to get suitable funders, because as we continue you'll realize that there are different granting agencies, and they offer different kinds of grants. And they should also have excellent, and this is very obvious, they should have excellent communication, administration, and presentation skills. They should also have good research skills. And professional grant writing or grantsmanship can be pursued by people with an undergraduate degree and proficiency in the above skills that I have just mentioned. So why write a grant proposal? So some of the things that would make one to write a grant proposal will be for a project, to get funding to start or complete a project. Another reason would be to further studies. Another one would be for research, and then you might need funds for starting an enterprise. There are granting organizations that give grants for starting an enterprise. Another one would be for conferences. And then finally for innovation. The experience that one gets, even if a grant is not awarded, the experience that one gets from writing a grant proposal has its benefits. And when one does not, even when one does not secure funding, and some of the benefits include advancing in research and grant writing skills, then enhancing academic employment prospects, because you can actually add this to your academic CV, and then raising one's profile as an independent academic researcher as a grant writer. Some of the granting agencies we have probably heard of or interacted with at some point. Some of them include KEMRI, that gives grants mostly for research. USAID will mostly give grants for humanitarian purposes and also for SMEs. There is a Ford Foundation that will give grants for innovation and humanitarian purposes. The MasterCard Foundation gives grants for education. There's one I came across called, that is a bit new, it's called Brad Pederson, and it's Pederson, as I have said it, Memorial Building Fund. It funds church buildings in remote and needy communities. And if you do go over to their website, they share photos of churches that they have built for congregants that maybe did not have church buildings. And then there's a Mustard Seed Foundation that I also came across that funds a wide variety of church projects. So there are two approaches to grant proposal writing, and one of them is reactive grants, and the other one is proactive. And just as they are, their names suggest, reactive grants are most common, first of all, and they involve responding to a request a request by the grantor for proposals on a problem they have identified and are looking for able people to solve. The proactive grants are less common, and the grant seeker, it's the grant seeker who presents a proposal to the granting agency, and as well as the solutions, the possible solutions to the problem. And if it impresses the grantor, then they will need to write a proposal now. And the proactive grant is more like a pitch that a marketer would make to prospective investors. Before writing a grant proposal, you are required to develop an actionable plan for the project, where you develop SMART goals. You list down the people that are needed, note down the costing for each phase of the project, how you plan on monitoring and evaluating the project, and then just note that grant application involves administrative work, so you need to begin early by preparing and collecting supportive documents. And it is wise to group similar tasks and break down bigger tasks into smaller ones. Then again, another tip that you need to take note of is that you need to decide, just before you write, of course, you need to decide on what funding opportunity to apply for. And then before settling that, does your project fit the statement of the granting organization? You need to see if it does fit the mission statement of the granting organization. Once a decision is made on the grantor, the funding agency that you'll settle on, then you read the instructions in the call for proposals and list all the documents needed to apply, noting the formatting requirements and page limits. Then schedule time to set up an account. If you're going to fill in the grant proposal online, schedule time for that. Set up an account, log into the system, download necessary forms and paperwork, etc. so that you're not doing that just before the deadlines and you're late. Then make one of funders overarching theme, make note of the funders overarching theme, their specific requirements, costs that may be prohibited, and the performance data to report. You will notice as you apply for grants that there are some costs that a granting agency might decide not to fund. So take note of that. Then map out the important deadlines, like the submission deadlines. You need to note that every granting agency has its specific requirements for the format of a grant proposal, and therefore take note and list all the required documents. So the components of a grant proposal include an abstract or executive summary, the statement of need or problem, the project description, an evaluation plan, and a budget and budget narrative. The executive summary is the first component, and it is usually written last, but often gives a first impression. So depending on the grantor, an abstract can be 1 or 2 pages, and also it is the hardest to write, and it is better written by someone who is separate from the grant making process, because they are better able to pick the key points. Because if you have been involved in writing the grant proposal, sometimes you might find it hard to pick the key points because of the emotional attachment you have with the grant making process. So it may be the only part, the executive summary may be the only part of the document that a grant maker will get to read. Therefore, make it count by clearly but briefly discussing the essence of the project and the expected outcome. Descriptive and memorable project title, you need to include that, which should not be too simplistic, but not also using jargon. And then ensure in the executive summary that you include the contact person who should be reached out to by the funder should they need to make further inquiries. Also remember in the executive summary to just note down the official project fund management entity. That is, if it is within the organization, just make sure to say that we as the organization will be managing the fund, and if it is someone outside the organization, make sure you mention that. Another thing you need to mention in the executive summary is the mission statement, which is the ultimate goal of the project. The summary of the project statement, that is action plans in 1 or 2 paragraphs. The expected outcomes, you need to include the expected outcomes. The funding request, how much are you requesting for in the grant proposal, and how much you plan on investing in the project yourself. So next is the next component is a statement of the need or problem. The grant maker will pick a proposal that best addresses how it will innovatively or creatively solve the problem, not the neediest. So you need to take account of that. So as you're writing a proposal, make sure that you have come up with an innovative way of solving whatever problem it is that you are seeking to solve, and make sure that it is innovative so that you win the confidence of the granting agency. The grant writer must demonstrate good understanding of the problem and logically narrate innovative solutions. You can use statistics and comparisons to illustrate, and of course remember that you need to have done some good research. So you're presenting findings using statistics and comparisons or graphs. Include results of local needs assessment. That is what I'm talking about, the research. So make sure you do a good assessment so that you are not you're not asking based on assumptions. You have done your research and you know exactly what the problem is. Then statement of impact of the problem. So how has the problem impacted those people or the community that you are seeking to help? Next is the project description. The next component is a project description, which discusses the action plan to solve the problems identified. Yes, and it includes a statement of the purpose of the funding. So make sure you include and you talk about the purpose of the funding and why you need it, the project's missions and goals, the SMART objectives, a list of everyone involved in the project and their role, and then management plan or key personnel that will be included in the project. The next component is the evaluation plan, and the evaluation plan describes who and how you will track progress, what will happen should you get unexpected outcomes, and who and how you will share the outcomes. Then include the funds that will be used, which should be at almost 15% of the budget. Okay. Next is the budget and budget narrative, which is the last component of the grant proposal. The budget spells out the whole cost of the project, including a stage. You include whole cost of the project. Then also include 1 or 2 page document explaining the budget. And this is what we are calling the budget narrative or justification. Make the budget exhaustive, make sure that it is exhaustive. And even when it exceeds the normal grant size of the funding organization, remember to explain where the additional funds will come from. And that way it will be easier to combine grants should you be fortunate to get multiple awards. Another thing about the budget and budget narrative is that you meet all the funding organizations' requirements, and when an item exceeds what they will normally fund for, explain the sources of the funds for these items that I have mentioned. Remember to include the estimated taxes, and for this you can always consult the tax experts. And then now that you know all that, you need to get down to writing the first draft of your grant proposal. So you write the first draft and you begin the application with a summary, remembering to include the mission and vision of your church or your organization. Include a statement of need, which basically outlines the problem you're working to solve. And then include your goals and objectives and indicate how this grant will make a difference. Include your methods and strategies by describing how you're going to achieve your goals. Also include the plan of evaluation, how you're going to hold your plan accountable. Include a budget as well as a budget narrative. And here we're talking about the first draft of the grant proposal. Write up your proposal with final vision casting and closing remarks. Wrap up your proposal with final vision casting and closing remarks. When writing the first draft, avoid jargon where possible. Follow sentences that have complex technical information with a summary in plain language. Don't review all information on the topic, but include enough background information to convince reviewers that you're knowledgeable about it. And then include preliminary data to convince reviewers you can do the work. And then cite all the relevant work. Make sure not to be overly ambitious. Don't propose to do so much that reviewers doubt your ability to complete the project. Rather, a project with clear, narrowly defined goals may prove favorable to reviewers. And then accurately represent the scope of your project. Don't exaggerate its impact. And then avoid bias and be forthright about the limitations of your research. And then you can use diagrams and figures effectively, making sure that they are not too small or contain too much information or details. After you've written the first draft, you can take the time to get feedback and then revise the draft accordingly. You can submit it to trusted members, mentors and supervisors, and then after that, now you can review using their feedback. Okay, so after you have received feedback, you revise your proposal based on that feedback. And one thing to just remember is not to be discouraged by the criticism or feedback that you will receive. And just to let you know that you might not get it right first. And just remember that receiving and incorporating feedback with humility is essential to grow as a good grant writer. Then, after you have incorporated the corrections, you prepare to submit your grant proposal. And then you make sure that you have proofread and do the final editing, check for spelling and grammatical errors, because they can make you look like you're not serious, or they leave a poor impression of your proposal. And then you ensure that you have a unified narrative that is going through the whole document and all the documents. Then finalize your documents by following a checklist. Make sure that all the documents are in place in the application and all formatting and organizational requirements are met. And then finally, you remember to follow all internal and external procedures while now submitting the grant proposal. Have login information for granting agency and institution portals, that is if you're filling online. And then double check any internal procedures required by your institution. Application for large grants, for example, often require a deadline for sign-off by your institution's research or grants office that is earlier than the funding agency deadline. So to avoid technical issues with the electronic portal, submit your proposal as early as you can. And having done all that, you are ready now to present your grant proposal, and hoping that now you sit back and you wait for response from the granting agency. With all that, I wish to finish there. Thank you for listening. I hope you now have some knowledge on grant proposal writing, and you know what a grant proposal is and what a grant is. Thank you.